Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. Going to have a look at weather next week to 10 days. For today's video, this will take us to around the 8th of February, so we're going into the first week of the last month of the winter with this update. We'll have a look at what's going on in terms of the weather patterns for the rest of this week and into next week. It's a very complicated pattern, and we will get some colder weather, I think, for a time over the weekend and start of next week, but probably not bringing in those bitterly cold easterly winds, although it's a very, very fine run thing. Just some very subtle adjustments would open the door to some very cold air that will be sitting just to our east in around a week's time. So I'll show you everything that's going on in a second, just to say that I'm still going to get the ENSO update done. I hope to get that done for you tomorrow to be able to be brought up to date with the latest in terms of El Nino, La Nina, all of that kind of thing. Wanted to do it over weekend, but as you know, it all went a bit wrong on Saturday evening, so I wasn't able to get that update to you on Saturday evening, but I will try and get that to you tomorrow. So we're going to start off with the Central England temperature from Hadley. This is updated up to yesterday, so provisional up to the 28th of January in the CET region. We are standing at 5.3 degrees, which is an anomaly now of around 1.5 degrees above average. So this is turning out to be really a very mild January in the end, which I think is very disappointing in terms of being winter 17-18 forecast. I was expecting January to have somewhat colder conditions than this, although it always looked like it could be on a bit of a knife edge between the ridge to the northeast and the trough to the west. But nevertheless, I think that's quite disappointing in terms of the winter forecast. And I think we could have expected something rather colder than that. Mind you, it will be a much colder month further north. And when we get the UK-wide figures in at the end of the month, I suspect we'll see Scotland has had a colder than average month, whereas the southeast of England will probably come out around 2 or 3 degrees above average with a very mild month. So it has been that kind of funny month where there's been a big temperature differential from north to south, and the CET region kind of is in that divide, or just a little bit to the south of that divide. I expect the divide actually is across northern England, so a little bit to the south of the divide for the CET region, and that's why you're coming out with really quite a mild month. But it has had some colder conditions at times. So looking ahead to the next week to 10 days, these are the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts from the PSU, Penn State University website. We've got the ECMDF here on the top, and the GFS, which I'll have a look at in a moment, is on the bottom. 500 millibars, 8,000 feet is an area in the absolute high pressure and low pressure up being moved around by the jet stream running above. Red extrapolates high pressure and blue to low pressure. These are the mean flowcharts for 7 to 10 days. And you can see what's happening. We've got this big ridge just out to the west and the northwest of the British Isles, with a trough to the south and to the southeast. That means that the jet stream is doing something rather like that. It's a very deep trough within the 500 millibar flow just to our east. And so we are very, very close. Within that trough, there's a lot of cold air. So we're very, very close to pulling in some really bitterly cold air from the north and from the east. But this ridge just isn't quite right to let it in. The ridge just needs to be a little bit further north. If it's centred around there, that would be absolutely perfect for placing us under the trough itself and the very cold air. But it's just not quite right. But it will only take an adjustment of a few hundred miles with this ridge pushed out a bit further northwards and northeastwards by about 500 miles. And then, certainly for England and Wales anyway, we would be placed under that very cold trough that's setting up there across many central parts of Europe. As it is quite chilly. It's going to be quite chilly and quite cold over the weekend and into the start of next week. There will be a little bit of wintry potential. Now, this is a little bit better. This is from the GFS. It is closer to what we want to see to let in cold air, because you'll see that the ridge is further north, and then this trough is centering again to our south and southeast. So what's happening is that the flow and the jet stream go rather like that, but we are placed a little bit further into that cold trough with the GFS. But again, you really want to see that ridge of high pressure just centering ever so slightly further north, being more centred around here, and then that would place us actually under the very cold trough. I certainly wouldn't rule out the chance of some potently cold weather coming up at the start of next week, but we do need to see an adjustment in the placement of that ridge. As it is, again, it is quite cold, and there could be a little bit of wintry potential over the weekend and into the start of next week as well. These are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. We're looking at Nottingham today. So we've got the upper air temperature average here, which is the thick red line. You can see what's happening at the moment. We're still mild and average, although it will be going a bit cooler in the next few days. And actually, the rest of the working week does look quite cool. Into weekend, briefly, it turns a bit milder, but then later in the weekend and through to next week, we get this drop in the temperature. It does go under the red line. It does go a bit colder than average, but not to the extent that we saw last night when we did the GFS ensembles watch. You'll remember last night we were getting several ensemble members when we did the ensembles watch, but we're going down close to that sort of level, going down close to -15 at 850 HPA. We have still got a few ensemble members who are going down to -10 though, so several of these ensemble members are still bringing in some really very cold air, but just backed off a little bit from that signal that we had last night. And again, not total agreement, because several ensemble members here are milder than average, including the operational run, actually, which doesn't really do much cold at all. That was sort of 6 o'clock, and I'll show you that in a second. In terms of the precipitation ensembles, so have got some precipitation spikes coming up here, but overall not that many, and you have to say it isn't an overly wet period by any means. I think we will keep high pressure very close to us within the next week to 10 days. Just where exactly that high pressure sits but will be the critical factor. Surface temperatures for Nottingham looking like this. So starting off nice and mild today at around 10 degrees. We do get a drop in temperature through the rest of this week. That's freezing just there. That's 10 degrees just there. So going down to around 4 or 5 degrees really in Nottingham for much of this week, which is quite cool. Then a little bit of a lift up at the end of the week, very temporarily, before the temperatures start to fall away again. But overall, not seeing too much in the way of severe cold being indicated here. There are a few ensemble members that are going down to very cold levels, but not that many of them. So it looks like the cold has been moderated a little bit. And again, that's just purely due to the placement of that ridge just out to our west-northwest in around a week's time. It isn't quite going far enough north to allow in the really cold air from the east. Temperature anomalies are looking like that for the next week. This takes us from the 29th of January to 6th of February. Overall, still a little bit milder than average. I would expect these to trend cooler in the coming days. Precipitation anomalies from the 29th of January to the 6th of February. A little bit drier than average for the south-southwest. A little bit wetter than average up in the north. Over in America, the east-west split continues. We've had this a lot through the winter. So western parts of the states have the temperature anomaly from the 29th of January to 6th of February are coming out very substantially milder than average, whereas many eastern states are coming out colder than average yet again. And there seems to be any problem getting cold air down into the east of America, does there. In terms of precipitation anomalies from the 29th of January to 6th of February, overall quite a dry scene for much of the states, and particularly in these western and southwestern states. That's how the GFS is looking for Friday then, back in wind into west and turning a little bit milder on Friday. But into the weekend, we bring this deep area of low pressure through the country, and that turns the winds into the north. There's that ridge building out to the north and to the northwest. How far north can we get it? Well, not that far north. So the ridge is stretching out from the west of Ireland to Scotland and then going up towards Scandinavia, which is allowing some northeasterly winds to just get in across England and Wales. But really you need to centre that ridge quite a lot further north. That, instead of that ridge being centred around Ireland, it needs to be centred around Iceland, and then you'll be able to pull in proper easterly winds. These are the upper air temperatures though. It is cold in a week's time. We are putting down cold air from the north and the northeast. This is the really cold air that's sitting over Scandinavia and Denmark. It is starting to head our way on those northeasterly winds, but by the time you go through to Tuesday the 6th of February, already the ridge is beginning to collapse a little bit, all really because of this cold air and the low pressure that we've got up here. We've got a strengthening of the polar vortex going on up here, and so that's strengthening the jet stream that's going through there, and that's pushing this ridge further southwards. So now by Tuesday 6th February, the very cold northeasterly winds are generally to our south and southeast. There's the upper air temperatures, just bringing in a little bit of -10 upper air temperature into the very far southeast, but really most of that very cold air is being kept across Scandinavia, down into Germany and down into the Low Countries as well. That's how things look by Wednesday the 7th of February, with this high pressure centering over the country. This is still in cold air, so it is enough to give hard overnight frost at the very least. I suspect there would be snow flurries or snow showers around these eastern and southeastern coasts as well. Again, there's the upper air temperatures. Notice that severely cold air from Scandinavia is now through Germany, down into France, and increasingly pushing down into Spain and Portugal. We had a lot of this last winter. Actually, you may remember it. Last winter we had far more snow through most of the Mediterranean than we ever had in the UK. And it looks like that kind of pattern may be coming up next week. So you might be hearing about snow falling in Ibiza, in sort of Mallorca, Menorca, Sardinia, Corsica, those sort of areas. They may be in for some snow, maybe even a little bit around the Costas, you never know. So it could be one of those funny weeks next week where the Med gets quite snowy, and we're just cold and frosty, but don't really open the door to those east or northeast winds. But again, I do have to emphasise, it would only take a slight weakening of all this pink and purple up here, these cold temperatures with the polar vortex. It would only place a slight weakening with that to allow this ridge to be further north, and then we would be pulling in that very cold air from the northeast. That's how we finish up at day 10. With the midnight run of the GFS still under that ridge and still looking quite cold. The coldest of the air is again through much of central and now southern and even southeastern parts of Europe, and we have relatively mild upper air temperatures, but down on the surface it will still be pretty cold and frosty as well. This is the 6 o'clock run of the GFS, so again very similar for Friday, milder with those westerly winds, and we get this push of cold air from the north over the weekend, so that could be enough to bring snow showers to northern and eastern parts of the country most definitely. Then this ridge builds through the country. It's trying to get to Scandinavia in a week's time, Monday the 5th, so we are just bringing in a little bit of a northeasterly wind into the far southeast of the country. There's the upper air temperatures. Again, you notice only on the other side of the North Sea do we have to go to find those bitterly cold, big freeze type upper air temperatures with the -10 isotherm coming across the North Sea and heading towards the east coast of the British Isles. But again, same as with the midnight run, that ridge then slips a bit further south and just stops those very cold upper air temperatures getting to us. Instead, they are starting to slide away to our southeast. There they go through Germany, down to France, into parts of northern Spain as well. Don't get me wrong, it's still cold across the British Isles, but we aren't opening the door to the beast from the east, which is where these blue colours are. They're still over on the continent where those severely cold upper air temperatures are. And then we go up to day 10. We keep that high pressure centrally located across the British Isles, so that will be dry, it will be cold and frosty. You would have some very hard overnight frost with that, probably freezing fog as well, but no snow because it's anticyclonic, it's dry. The upper air temperatures probably not overly cold at this point. The very cold upper air temperatures are going to our south. There we are with the upper air temperatures, and you see that it's generally across southern and southeastern Europe that we have those cold upper air temperatures, though they are being modified even there. Interestingly, this 6 o'clock run of the GFSN has a go at taking this ridge back north again in the extended range. We've gone to Saturday the 10th and Sunday the 11th of February, and we are putting down a renewed northerly wind then once again. So overall the outlook is quite cold, I think, for February. Just we may not get those very severe freeze-up type upper air temperatures from the east that are threatening, but will probably or may well stay over the other side of the North Sea through the early part of next week. Finally, the ECWF looking like this. So again, we've got the winds in from the west to start the weekend. Then we pull down this colder northerly wind as the low pressure moves through the North Sea over the weekend. This is midnight on Sunday the 4th of February, where we are bringing down these cold northerlies. Again, we're trying to build this ridge behind that northerly up to Scandinavia. We are turning wind into the northeast somewhat. That would certainly be enough to bring snow showers into eastern parts of the country early next week. But then again, the same idea as with the GFS, the high pressure begins to just slip a little bit further south as this low pressure runs through between Iceland and Greenland, and that cuts off the threat of those easterly winds. We finish up on day 10 looking like that, high pressure just out to our southwest. So not overly cold at this point, relatively mild upper air temperatures are piling in around the top. However, if you have a look at the debuilt ensemble, you'll see that yet again, that operational run of the ECM, debuilt is in Holland, by the way, but it's only over the other side of North Sea, which is relevant for us to some degree. You'll see that, yet again, that operational ECM ends up as just about the warmest option within the ECM ensembles, and many of the ensembles are actually really very cold in debuilt as we go through into next week. So I think I have to be a little bit cautious about that. That's a little bit overly mild, I think, with the placement of that ridge, and I suspect the GFS is going to be closer to this, which is that we will have the ridge. Let's go back to day 10. We'll have the ridge more or less over the country, which will be cold and frosty. But again, I suspect the very coldest of the air, those -10, -15 Celsius upper air temperatures, which is true sort of beast from the east type upper air temperatures, I suspect those will remain over the other side of the North Sea and won't quite get to us, but it's going to be a very close run thing. And if we was to get a subtle adjustment with this, then certainly for England and Wales, we could open the door to those east or northeasterly winds. So yes, I think it will be cold for much of the time next week, and it will be mainly cold and anticyclonic and frosty. Snow will probably be limited. There may be some snow showers in the east and the southeast through the early part of next week, and also this coming weekend, around Sunday into Monday. I think there will be snow showers in the north and the east bend. But after that, probably the high pressure just slips down over country and keeps us dry and frosty and sends those very cold upper air temperatures down through Germany, France, and into Spain and the Mediterranean. That's what I suspect is going to happen, but it only takes a little bit of an adjustment, and we would be placed into those really cold easterly winds. So I'll keep checking back to this for a little bit longer. May well be that next week is substantially colder than it's looking like it will be just at this moment. Right, so that's today's video done and dusted. Tomorrow we'll have a look at CFS V2 for the next month, as well as bringing you up to date with where the next week 10 days. And also I am hoping to get that update to you for the ENSO region as well, but I wasn't able to do on Saturday. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.